This is On Spirit Today. Welcome to On Spirit Today. I'm Bruce, your host, and if you're not familiar with the show, we have conversations with people who've experienced spiritual growth and transformation due to extraordinary events in their lives. They tell us their remarkable stories and share with us meaningful, insightful life lessons that we can apply to our own lives. Today, we'll be listening to my interview with Leonard Martin, an amazing man with great perseverance and resilience who had a near-death experience and whose insights coming out of that experience can open our minds to new ways of being in the world. Here's my interview with Leonard. Hello and welcome to On Spirit Today. I'm Bruce, your host, and it's a pleasure having you with us. We've got a great show for you today. Our guest is Leonard Martin. Leonard, thanks very much for being on the show and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm grateful, humbly grateful.
The
Thank you.
pleasure is ours. Leonard is a man of many talents, a practitioner of meditation, and has a company called Deleth Aromatherapy and Meditation Sanctuary. He is an author and a near-death experiencer. In 2016, Leonard had a heart attack and was declared clinically dead, but ultimately came back. While he was gone, he had a near-death experience, which he writes about eloquently in his memoir, The Second Time Around, a memoir about a life, a death, and a second chance. It's a great read. And I must confess, Leonard, I have the ebook. I think you have the hard copy with you. Would you mind holding up a copy of it so we can
I
see it?
do.
There we go. Indeed. That's it. A great book. Indeed. A great
Thank
read.
you. Appreciate it.
It's very true. All right, so Leonard has kindly agreed to share his remarkable story with us. Leonard, at the outset, before we get into any questions and answers, maybe we could ask you to uh, tell us a bit about your background. Maybe you can give us a bit of a summary about your background and a summary of what happened to you on the fateful day of your near-death experience.
Sure, no problem. Well, I'm from the South Side of Chicago. I was born and raised on the South Side of Chicago in the late 70s. And I grew up around a loving family. You know, it was a lot of love. Granted, we had, it was like a mixture. I want to say a mixture of things to do and things not to do. You know, I growing up on the South Side in Inglewood, it was pretty challenging and rough. But as a child, it kind of didn't bother you, you know. But you children pick up on everything, whether we believe they don't or not. Some people like to think they're just a kid; they don't know anything. Trust me, children know a lot, and we remember a lot. You know, so
Very
growing up
true.
there, you know, my dad. Um, for some who don't know, in the 80s in the inner city, it was heavy laden with drugs and gangs and things, and I want to say violence to an extent. And my dad and some of my family members were involved in that, and I witnessed some of it, didn't understand it as it was going along, but seeing the outcomes of those events kind of showed me what not to do because I didn't want to be in that situation, you know, growing up. um, so I kind of grew up in that environment where you what they say, you sink or swim, you know, or you learn or and adapt, or you go along with it and repeat it. And I chose the latter, moving along. But because of those things that was going on, it taught me a lot of strength. It taught me perseverance. It taught me how to get through any situation that comes my way, whether I liked it or not. And I took that every step of the way, every step of the way. And as teenagers, when I became a teenager, I had to do something to keep me involved to where I wouldn't get into that kind of environment. So what I ended up getting into was I started dancing. Started dancing, I want to say just locally, and then turned professional. Me and my guys, we've known each other since grade school, so it's around of course, some years after that, that we started doing more performances, and it kept us out of the inner city, and it kept us away from a lot of the stuff of not to do. But we wasn't not privy to it, if that makes sense.
Sure, it does.
Um, I used to dance. I used to dance with a group. My group was called Future Three. We did concerts. We did local talent shows. We did a talent show for Bernie Mac in Chicago. It was one of our first bigger ones, and then we did a couple of concerts for a couple of rap groups, Method Man, Redman, DJ Quick, etc. The Ghetto Boys. Then we became participants on the Apollo, amateur night at the Apollo in New York.
That must have been a
You know,
thrill. You must have been really
it,
excited
it,
about that.
it was. We were, I want to say, the first group from Chicago who did our style of dance to make it to there. We participated in a contest that was given like throughout, practically the country, and most people who was in the Midwest came to Chicago to participate in that contest, and we won amongst I think a few others. And we won. We did the show at Chicago Amphitheater at the time they closed down. We got standing ovation, of course, and the winner of that get all the expense paid trip to Chicago, I mean to New York for the Apollo.
Well,
So
congrats. Many years after the fact. Congrats.
thank you. I still have videos of
Mhm.
it.
Amazing.
Yeah, we participated in it. We had fun. It was an experience. We didn't win because he wasn't the hometown favorite of New York. So we didn't win, but we were able to come back whenever we wanted because we developed a kind of a relationship, with the producers and everything. But coming back to Chicago, we were like a little bit of a local, what's that, local celebrities, to an extent, but we still started seeing more and more of things that would make us question why certain things was happening. We thought that getting out of the inner city at temporary would change our lives forever. It changed our lives not the way we wanted to at the time, but it changed our lives to the point to where we got things that we needed, to get through whatever came our way next time. And always remember, something always finds you, whether it's bad or good. It never fails. It's just how you handle the situation when it comes to you. And we had to learn that growing up. We got, everybody started to dissipate after a while. We started having families. The dance group started to go its own ways. And it seemed as if things were starting to make a turn for, I want to say, the adulthood, to introduce us to adulthood. Heartaches, breakups, disagreements,
Sure.
all the above. I ended up meeting someone. I had a child in 97, my first daughter in 97. After my first daughter, um, I started working for Coca-Cola out there in Chicago so I can take care of my family. So I've always been like a family man and take care of my responsibilities. Grandma and mom kind of taught me that, you know. So I was taking care of my family, doing the best I could, and since the group members and everybody was going their own way, I had to learn. I had to be an adult now. I had to take care of this mouth that I brought into the world and my girlfriend at the time. Um, Instead, I worked for Coca-Cola. About 2 years later, I went to trade school, um, got my EPA license in HVAC. I had a son, and then the neighborhood started getting bad or worse, so to speak. We had drug dealers decided they want to pop up on the corners, around our families and everything, and we just wasn't into it. So one day we were just standing in front of my house, and on the side of my grandmother's house, there was a bag of crack cocaine on the ground. And we had children running around, and I found it before kids got to it. And I said that, you know what? y'all can have this. I don't want no part of this. So, I was ready to get up out of there. And my girlfriend at the time, she had came here to Columbus, Ohio, and her parents had moved here, about 2 years or a year prior. She came here, said she wanted to move here. I came to visit. I said it wasn't for me. I didn't want to do it. It was too quiet. But after seeing that, I was like, no, you can have it. You can
Wow.
have it. I want no
Hearing you
part of it.
tell, I'm sorry, and Leonard, just to
Oh, it's no
interrupt for a
worries. It's no
moment,
worries.
it's just striking hearing you tell your story that you really had uh, a lot of tough aspects to your childhood and to your upbringing and really tough circumstances, but you always wanted more. You're motivated, you're ambitious, wanted more for yourself and more for your family, for your kids.
Yes, I did. My extent, I learned that from one of the things I learned from my mom, and my grandmother, because of the drugs and stuff that I told you about when I was little. My mom didn't want us in that environment anymore. So my grandmother was like, my mom was about to move to the projects of Chicago. And I don't know why. Maybe she was just didn't think about it, but the projects are a lot worse than than the city
Mhm.
itself.
Wow.
And my grandmother was like, my grandkids and my daughter not moving to the project. So she bought us a house like maybe I think 6, 7 blocks away, And
So you live
so
nearby.
yeah, walking distance.
Nice. Well, you write really eloquently about your mother and your grandmother in your book, and they sound like amazing people who really had a very positive impact on you and shaped a lot of your values.
Oh, well, thank you. They were, we say that the women are especially our grandmothers are the matriarchs of our family, and they keep us grounded. And as children, you don't always agree because you're a child, but most of the time they mean it, they come from a good place.
And,
And some people listen and take it with us.
and you did.
Yeah, I had to sink or
Great.
swim.
Great. Indeed. You swam. Mhm. So I'm sorry to interrupt you with that. Please continue, Leonard.
Oh, that's okay. Um, so we got here. We ended up moving here. At the time by that time it was 2000, I want to say one. Uh, and we had just had my daughter, my youngest daughter, and I had a hatchback Hyundai Accent, very small car. Packed up a booster seat and two car seats, and it towed in the back, and we just drove up here to Columbus. And just when you would think that, this is a new life, and now it's just about to get better, but no way to go but up, but I was quickly proven wrong, you know. Um, we got here, we had to stay with her parents, who at one point in time, I felt they didn't really like me because they didn't like me in Chicago like that, because we had different, I want to say beliefs. They were heavy laden Baptists, in religion, and I wasn't. I had studied, so I had studied the Bible. I had studied history. I want to say in '90s. I was probably about 16 when I started studying history and religion, and I started reading about, being a Hebrew Israelite and everything. And because of that, they thought that I wasn't good for their mom. I mean, for their daughter. So they didn't, needless to say, they didn't really like me that much. So we got here. I had to stay with them, where I kind of felt uncomfortable, you know. Um, but it just kept going down. That year 2001, as a lot of people know, was, pretty rough year for, most Americans and people in the world. I had to find a job. I had to start all over again, then looking at that image on the news, that happened with the Twin Towers, it was kind of gave me goosebumps even to this day,
Sure.
you
Of
know,
course.
but it was like, okay, now I definitely, it's going to be a little bit harder for me to find something to take care of my family now because of everything is locked down and so secure now. So I was very uncomfortable. But I kept going, made a way, got an apartment right across the street from their mom. And it just, again, that's when the thing started to take a even darker turn for me. Me and my mother, my children were, had a disagreement, and we were talking and everything, and ended our engagement. And as soon as she put the ring down on the counter, I went into my room, lied down. As soon as I lied down, my dad called me and told me that my grandmother wasn't doing too well. So I said, okay, just keep me posted. Later on that evening, he called me back and said that she didn't make it. So we was a little saddened about that. It was like my relationship was over and my grandmother passed away. So I didn't have time to
Really tough time.
grieve.
I'm sorry,
Very
really
tough,
tough time.
very, had to go bury her, got there, and consoling the family. And then the following year, we had another disagreement. I don't know what it's about, but we had another disagreement. And again, I went into my room, lied down, tried to clear my head, and my cousin called me and said that my other cousin was just killed, was just murdered. And he was like one of my older cousins. So, and I was like, what do you mean? He said, yeah, he said he's dead. And he told me what happened to an extent. And I felt really bad because I had just came up there, and I told him that the next time I come up there, I'm coming to see you, because he said, why you didn't come to see me while you was up here? Because I said, I wasn't driving, it wasn't my fault. When I come back up there, I'm gonna come to see you. I promise, the first person. So it made me sad that I never got the chance to see him again that time. Um, so with all those things going on, I didn't grieve from my grandmother the prior year. So now his passing come up, and it's like just couldn't do anything but be there for the family, So I had to put my grief to the background. Um, got back home. I started working for Coca-Cola again. They let me back, thank heavens. Uh, and I had a routine. One day I had a routine physical with Coke, and then as I found out that I had lupus. And this is probably 2005 or six and everything. So it's like I didn't know much about it, but I just knew I had it, and it's just something that just had to go to the back because I had to provide for my family, you know.
Gosh,
So
well, you were a trooper despite the really difficult circumstances, at loss after loss, health issues,
that's,
but you still stayed focused.
I had to, because I felt that I had 4 miles, 5 miles to feed, which included my kid's mom, and I just had to. I didn't have time to rest. I didn't have time to to do anything. So I just kept going, kept pushing. Then it seems like then we officially broke up, and then we started having custodial arguments and things and stuff like that. So now it's another thing on my plate. Then I started developing severe depression, severe anxiety, going back and forth to the hospital, even while I was at work because of anxiety attacks and because I have asthma. I didn't know the difference. It was just bad, you know. Um, then it seems like a year or so after that, we had another death in the family. And it seemed as if every other year, there was somebody in that family who had passed away. If it wasn't for a natural cause, it was for violence, you know. And again, just couldn't, just didn't have room to grieve. I didn't have room to grieve. So one day at work, I picked up a book because I heard about it. It's called Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda. And I picked it up and I read it, and I was like, wow, I need something to help keep me calm with everything that's going on. Maybe this can help balance me. And I would say this is right around 2009 to 12, something like that. Started reading, find out about meditation and everything. So I started practicing meditation, anything that can keep me relaxed and grounded, because it was just, again, I'd never breathed from everything that was going on, never breathed. Didn't have time to. I started doing my finances started to get tight. I started working because I'm a workaholic as well. I was. So I worked crazy hours at work. Sometimes I would go and work at 7 a.m., get off at like 3:30, go back in at 6, get off at 6 in the morning the next day. You know, I was
Pretty
doing it.
outrageously long days.
It was so bad to sometimes where I would sometimes climb up the stairs to my apartment, climb on my knees, get in the house and just pass out, had a fever of 103. Everything that I saw was orange. And I had to make one of grandma's, her broth to help you get better. Had to make that.
Some
Had
of
to
those
make
home
that.
remedies help.
Yes.
And how
No, it
was
can't be
the,
a look.
yeah.
What you say?
I'm sorry, I was just going to ask you, with all the grief you were experiencing, the overwork, the health issues, how did the meditation help? How did the
Yes.
meditation play into everything?
Yes, the meditation, at first it was hard to sit, like most people I hear. It was hard to sit for like even 5 minutes without your mind racing and you want to get up. So I had to keep at it. I had to keep at it. And I remember the first day that I did it, I got really into my meditation one day, and it was just me in the house. My kids was with their mom. I don't have anybody else in the house, and I just got to meditating, and I went deep, and all of a sudden I heard like laughter, and I was like, I don't have any kids in this house. Where is this coming from? So I was like, okay, I think maybe I'm doing this too much. So I stopped for a second, got
Wow.
up. But I went back into it and I started doing it more and more and more. And gradually to I got to a point to where I was able to do it to like maybe an hour. Excuse me. And I started doing it frequently, like maybe twice a day when I wake up and when I went to bed. And it helped. It helped keep me calm to the point to while I was at work, no one knew I was having problems. Anybody who I came across, they didn't think that there was anything wrong. They thought my life was just peachy keen. But it was chaotic, but the meditation grounded me. And if so I'm still going. It was grounded me, but those things were still going on. I didn't grieve with it, just kept being sick. I had to make a decision, like unfortunately a lot of Americans had to do, where I was going to either feed my children or keep a roof over my head, bills, whichever one. So I would feed them, and sometimes I would be at work and I would just maybe have an apple that whole day, finding change in the couch, or, you know, maybe I have $1 or something, and I go get something that I don't usually eat from like a fast food place, dollar burger. And I started to lose weight and I started to get sicker. And I think it was about 2013, went for a routine checkup, and they said that I had a pulmonary embolism. I was like, what is that? They said, you have a blood clot in your lung. They said, you have to take care of it, put you on these blood thinners, because if you don't, it could kill you, go to your heart and kill you. It can be fatal. I didn't think it was anything of fatal. I didn't think anything about it. you know, all I just knew is that I just take care of my family, take herbs and teas and my medicine and
And
everything.
it can't happen to me. It won't happen to me.
Yeah, it won't happen to me. I'll be all right. I heard a thing's been fatal, but nah, I'll be all right.
I think a lot of us feel that way sometimes, sure.
Yeah, I know. And I learned that you have to listen to your body and sometimes listen to these doctors and take things seriously. And even with this grief, and then knowing that I had lupus and now that I have pulmonary embolism and losing weight at the same time because I was sick all the time and not eating, I was literally dragging. But it was like I gotta keep going. People tell me to slow down. It's like I can't. I'm about to lose my house if I don't. And I did it for my kids so they can have a roof over their head.
All
I can't do that.
the obstacles, I'm sorry, the obstacles were just piling up, but you just kept pushing because for the good of your family.
Yeah, indeed. And then I want to say 2015, earlier that year, I found out that I did a routine checkup and found out that that one pulmonary embolism turned to three. So now I had three blood clots in my lungs that year. Again, I was like, okay. keep taking care of myself, even though I wasn't really taking care of myself, not eating and stuff. And then later on that year, my uncle was killed. Um, he was killed by my little brother. Um, yeah,
Sorry to hear that.
yeah, I didn't want to hear it at the time. In my grandmother's kitchen, he was. Um, and I asked my little brother, "Is it okay if I share that story when I'm sharing mine?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "Definitely, people need to know, about mistakes and enlighten people." I said, "Okay, thank you." And my grandma, when it happened, my grandmother, when she heard the gunshot, she went into the kitchen and my little brother turned around and she said, when she looked at him, my grandmother is a no nonsense. She's not religious and she will not sugarcoat anything for you. So she went in the kitchen. She said, when he turned around, she said his eyes was pitch black. She said, I had never seen that before. It was scary. She said, I kicked him out. I had to push him out. And he didn't know what was going on until he actually stepped out the door and his eyes got normal again. But yeah, that happened. So I had to go to Chicago, bury my uncle. And at the funeral, I was letting everyone know, and this is from all my readings and teachings and everything. I had to tell everyone that said, this is not our uncle in his casket. I said, this is only the body that he was driving. I said, he still exists. He's still here. He's not gone. So don't cry. Don't fret. He's still here with us.
So at that
So I
point,
comforted family.
you comforted the family and you comforted them through sharing your belief in the afterlife.
Yes. And that was the thing. It was just my belief and my faith. And it was really strong faith of knowing that. But then who knew that my faith would now be tested and will now be, I get to see if this faith if it's real. I wasn't expecting that, but
But it
so
happened.
yeah, I know, right? So I had given up on dating. I had given up on a lot of stuff, and all these new just like work, 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 keep taking care of the family. And I just started dating this girl, just now my wife, in December of 2015. Um, we started dating 2016. I would say summer 2016. I went back to the doctor, get checkup, and then they told me I had angina. The heart, and it's like,
The list is getting longer.
yeah, it's like okay. I'm like, you give me all this grief, family members said, and then I got diagnosed with lupus. So now you give me this anxiety, was putting me in the hospital every day. I got this depression. Like, give me a blood clot. You give me 3 blood clot in my lungs. And you make me lose weight. You get me sick. And now I have angina. I said, okay, just keep going. You got to just keep going. So I just keep going, working. One day I come in from work because I would start a shift to like the evening shift. I mean the afternoon shift. Got in September 17th, leaving September 17th. I came in from work. I had a funny feeling in my chest. I didn't think anything of it. But it just felt weird. I walked up my stairs, getting ready to turn in, called my brother or my best friend, my mom, um, talk to them before I turn in and stuff. The next thing you know, don't know what happened. I'm waking up in the hospital about a week later. Didn't know how it happened. All I know, I'm hooked up to tubes. I still have my trach uh, in my throat. The spot, I opened my eyes, looked over, saw my family, the doctors, and this glow around my mom, around my family. I recognized this glow, but it was kind of weird that I recognized this glow before, and it was based off of what I found out when I wasn't here. And I didn't know what happened. Doctor said, Jay, can you hear us? You know why you're here? They said you had a heart attack. We lost you. We lost you for a day. You died on us, but you're back. I just looked, just closed my eyes again. Um, and as I regain consciousness, eventually I'm noticing that my family, they're still here with me. I didn't expect to see them because it seemed like nobody came to visit me, and I was here for like 15 years, so nobody I came to see me. So my mom and everybody was up here, and I was just looking, and I didn't think of anything of it. My kids and my best friend, who has MS, he's in a wheelchair. Him and his wife and their family was up here with me, and his wife said, "Can you squeeze my hand?" I squeezed the hand. I went back out. And when I came to, they said, "You know what happened?" They said, "You drove yourself here to the hospital." I said, "Really?" They said, "Yeah." They said, "You drove yourself here to the hospital. You parked your car. As soon as you got out of your car and went to the emergency room, as soon as you got through the emergency rooms, you collapsed and was a cardiac arrest."
And you had no
Uh,
recollection of driving yourself or any of that.
I had no memory of it at all. I didn't know how I got there. I didn't know what happened. They said, "You coded, went to, code blue. They resuscitated you. You coded again. They got you back, stabilized you, put a stent in your heart, and you was about to code again. And they got you back. And then they flew me to Riverside Hospital here in Columbus. And when I got there, they said I coded 2 more times. And they kept working on me. Called my mom and my family. My kids was here with their mom. Called my mom in Chicago and said, "Someone need to get here. He's in bad shape. He needs somebody here with him. Not looking good." So you can imagine how they got that call. And by this time, this is like early morning 2018. I mean, early morning the 18th, August 18th, like 4, 5 in the morning. So they're ecstatic, not know what's going on. So they pack up, they get ready to come out here. They got a call back shortly after that. And the doctor said that he's sorry he didn't make it. He's gone.
What a shock to them.
Yeah, they kept going. My mom said, "We got to get there. We got to get there." And when she arrived, like, because it's about 5, 6 hours from Chicago to here. So when they arrived, my mom got off the elevator and it was like a waiting room full of people for me. And this was, excuse me, this was, the doctors told me that the waiting room was so full that they thought it was for other people, but they were all for me. Now I wouldn't, I'm like, wow, I didn't, I would never thought, but
Everyone was pulling
she,
for you.
yeah. So she got off the elevator. So when she got off the elevator, she was met by my children's mom. And my mom was like, "Okay, where's my baby? Where is he?" And my children's mom said, "He's been gone all day. He's gone." And as you can expect, she collapsed. We had to get her up and everything. She didn't want to believe it, but it was the case. My coworkers and everybody was up there, and I was just lying in the bed, and they was waiting on my mom. They gave them the courtesy to come and say goodbye, you know. So they were waiting, and they kept coming by my bed. And my daughter, who was 18, just turned 18, she was about to be 18. No, she was 18. They told her she had to make the decision to sign the papers so they can start the process. She said no, and they said the doctors said he's gone. He's been gone all day. There's nothing you can do. He's gone. And she looked up at my mom with tears in her eyes and hugged my mom and said, "I don't want to let him go yet. I don't want to let him go. He's still in there." And she said, "Baby, this is your choice." So my daughter, she said, "No, no, we wait." She said, "Wait another day. He's still there. I know he's there. Wait another day." So they waited another day, went home to my house, started cleaning out my house, make memorial plans. Earlier that day, in the 18th, though, when it happened, my job had already been notified of my passing, so they started the process and everything. Um, and the next morning, the next day they got a call from the doctors and said, we don't understand it, but we found a faint pulse. Come up here." They were happy and shocked and everything at the same time. My mom's very religious, so I can imagine some of the things she was saying.
If
So when
only
they
we
got
knew.
up, yeah, no, right? So when they got up there, the doctor said, "Okay, even though we found his faint pulse, we don't know. Still, he only have a 20 something percent chance of survival. And if he do, we don't know what his quality of life is going to be because his organs and everything are shut down. He might be a vegetable." And they said, keep him on there. Just keep trying." So they put me in medically induced coma. Um, hooked me up to this machine called an ECMO machine, which circulates blood through your body. So they figured that they would put blood over my heart, so it can get it pumping again. Um, so they did that. And by this time, because everything, before they started doing that, because of everything, I was sitting for so long, my body started to swell. My skin started to get cracks in it, blood coming from my skin, my eyes, because it wasn't no oxygen and, flowing through my body because no blood. It had different heart stopped. So when they started the machine and everything to get everything going, they put me in medically induced coma. And while I was in that coma, I had 26 strokes. So 26 strokes throughout my brain. Um, I Ironic thing was through the whole thing, I didn't know that I had passed away. I thought that maybe I was just sleeping. I thought but I knew that I still existed. I knew that I still was. I was, I want to say, what's the word? Just become nothing. I just knew I still existed. I was aware that I still existed. And I remember going down a tunnel. It was a tunnel. It was like oval, around tunnel, and it was hands reaching out to me, and the tunnel was like amber, and hands was reaching out to me, but it wasn't malicious,
So
you
all of
know.
this was, I'm sorry, just to give it some context, Leonard. So all of this was going on while you were out in bed, presumed dead.
Yeah,
This rich inner experience was occurring. And
yes,
as you describe it, it started with a tunnel. And did you say it was an amber colored tunnel?
yes, it was like amber. The whole environment was like amber. Yeah, and I wasn't afraid. I wasn't sad. I wasn't happy or anything. I was just going along with everything. I got through the end of the tunnel, and I found myself floating down a highway. And I didn't notice this until shortly realized that that hospital that I was at was right there by the highway. So I found myself floating down the highway. It's gloomy outside and everything. And I went past one of the landmarks here in Columbus. It's in the Brewery District. And it was a fountain that I went past, which is in this neighborhood, the Brewery District. And after that, it just like immediately this shot just like was in the blink of an eye, was just in space, you know. And when I was in space, it was dark, but then I could see a planet at my footstep, like in front of me, but but downward, but in front of me. It was a planet, and I used to say, every time I was saying that it was an Earth-like planet because people would presume that it was Earth, and since they say that, like maybe it was Earth. But in all honesty, I can't say what planet it was, but I knew that it was life, and it could have been Earth, and it could have been somewhere else. But I saw this planet, and it was like a tree, like an energy protruding from the planet, coming out of the planet like a tree. And it was circulating, the energy was circulating through in and out of the planet. It wasn't going around like this, like the what they call it, the magnetic field wasn't going around like that. It was coming out, and the energy you can see just like circulating in and out through the planet and through the tree. So I'm looking at it, just looking at it, again, no feeling, no body. I was just part of everything. I was just part of this, the ether, the air. I was part of everything, but I was aware of what I was looking at. Then I looked to my left and I saw like a swirl of stars. And I thought that it looks like a wormhole of some sort. And it was just like swirling. And it wasn't until like few years later that I was just looking online, and I looked and I was like, that's what I saw. And underneath it, it says Andromeda Galaxy. And I was like, hmm, so maybe I saw it in Andromeda Galaxy. I was like, okay, cool. But I saw it, and then I heard my name being called. And it was like a feminine, I think it was like in the feminine nature. But I heard it being called, and I looked to my right, gazed to my right, didn't see anything, it was just dark. Then I looked at the planet again, and I looked at the stars, galaxy thing again. Then I heard my name being called again, and I didn't think anything of it again, but I just heard my name. I was worried it was called. And after that, it's been dark. Don't remember anything. But at one point in time, when I did wake up, family members that I wouldn't have thought would have came up there, was there visiting me. I was calm. I was peaceful. I had no anger. I had no sad, any kind of emotion. I was just there. I tell people, I said and it sounds morbid, I said this was the best rest I ever had in my life.
You felt good when you woke up.
Right. It was just, I felt new. There was nothing bothering me. There was nothing. Anything that had happened before, any thoughts of a job, I wasn't aware of anything else but what was in front of me.
So
You
you
know,
really were focusing on the moment, all of the things that had been bothering you so much, and understandably so, getting you down on the back burner, afterthoughts at this point, I guess.
yep, they were gone. They didn't
Amazing.
bother me at all.
Just a couple of questions about the experience itself, and it's really an awe-inspiring story, just remarkable, and thanks very much for sharing it. Just a couple of questions about the experience. You mentioned that you went down a tunnel, amber colored. You saw hands reaching out. Do you have any idea who those hands belong to? Who were the people? Who were the
I don't.
beings?
I have no idea who they belong to. I just saw them. It was just random. Just random hands. I don't know who they belong to.
So it
I did.
wasn't
I didn't question
necessarily
it either.
anyone you knew. It was no one you were familiar with. Do you even see faces or hands only?
You know, I thought I saw somebody. I thought I saw something look like Asian eyes. Slanted. Nothing. It's not that way. But I thought I saw something that. I thought I saw a face that looked Asian. I thought I did. I'm not really sure, but I thought I saw that. If nothing
Mm.
else, but hands for the most part. I thought I saw that. So I couldn't, at one point in time, I couldn't tell, like, okay, are these people who live that existed, or are these, or are they somewhere else? Someone else, I don't know. I
Right.
just didn't even question it.
Right. You really couldn't identify who the beings were, and it wasn't important at that time to really investigate it. You were going with the flow, so to speak. You were living the
Correct.
experience.
Yes.
Amazing. How about you mentioned the going into space, seeing a planet, which could have been Earth, may have been another planet, the energy sort of exuding from it. This is maybe a more general sort of question. How was it? Why did you see what you saw? Do you think in some way you were being shown something by an external force? Do you think it was just random? You went into space and this is what you saw? Was there any sort of master plan behind it? What do you think?
I think that's the second time somebody ever asked me that, and it's a valid question. Um, I know a lot. I don't know why I was shown that. I don't know why. Sometimes I did ask the question like, okay, is there a reason I'm saying this? Is this of something to come? Is this somewhere else where there's another planet that's doing this? Am I far away from my own galaxy? You know, those are questions that I eventually started asking when people asked me that, because it's like, I don't know why I was shown this. I don't know. And also there was there's a thing with the Kabbalah. You're familiar with the Kabbalah, right?
Yes.
There's a thing in the Kabbalah where they talk about uh the Sephiroth, the 10 Sephiroth, and they talk about the different levels of heaven that you go to before you get to Kether, you know. And so I wondered sometimes, it's like, was I on one of those branches? Was I in one of those levels of heaven where I saw that? How far was I? Because I knew that I wasn't in that body of the earth anymore. I knew I wasn't, because I knew I existed wherever I was at that moment. When I saw those things, I existed. So it's like, where was I? I didn't ask that question until I got those questions myself. So
Right.
I I don't know.
But in your search for answers, you think something, for example, a belief system such as Jewish mysticism, the Kabbalah, could potentially hold some of the answers. You don't know.
I do. I do sometimes, because I that's some of the things that I studied. too. I studied, some of the 10 Sephirah, some of the things about the Kabbalah, the Bible, and a lot of spirituality, the Nag Hammadi scriptures. I like these things. I something attracts me to these things.
Right.
Yes.
Mhm.
So I started reading. As I started reading these things, I'm like, where's the connection? I'm like, this is solidifying to me that some of these things that I read, mainly from some of these sources, is true. You know, it's true. The faith that when you die, you know, you you go somewhere else. That part is true. It was ironic to be able to experience that, to know that when you pass away, you never really die. And I don't know where you go. There's things saying you go to this level, that level, this level. But even some of the angels, Hebrew Malachims, some of them haven't even got to the throne of the Creator. So it's like, where was I? How far was I? But I knew that I still existed.
Interesting. It sounds from everything you're describing that you're a seeker, seeking answers, always have been, and
Yes,
you turn to some religious writings that you think may hold some of the answers.
hmm
Right. Wow.
definitely.
Intriguing. Something related to that, you mentioned as you explained the experience that you felt, and I think you've written about this too, that you felt united with the world, part of the infinite. How would you describe that feeling of unity? How would you describe being something, part of something much bigger? Can you put it into words, what it felt like, what it involved, what it meant?
Oh wow. It's I guess the best way I can describe that is, how most people are aware of their body. They're aware they're still here, that they're moving around, and sometimes they don't pay attention to it. But you know that you're still here because you can feel it because it's you. It's just you. The way I guess that's the best way I can explain it.
Mhm.
So when I was part of everything and whatnot, I was familiar with just being. I was familiar with just where I was and what I was part of. It was a familiarity. It felt like it was normal. It was a normal to be, just be, you know. And
Right.
I think it's that term where I believe it was with Abraham. I think it was Abraham. It was in the Bible where he asked God, he said, "What is your name?" And he said, "I am," or Ahaya, Ahaya, and in Hebrew. And I was like, and I knew at that moment what that felt like, what he meant. I am whatever I will to be. And at that moment when I was there, just part of everything, I just was, you know, couldn't be really, you couldn't put in words what I was, but you just knew that you was. What they say, that consciousness of just being.
And you felt more than yourself as we can see you now, more than something just physical.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. It was just like, it was one of those things to where it's like if someone touches you, because with the body, if someone touches you, you can feel it and whatnot. I was at that point that felt, just being to where it's like like all those things of touch and feel and smell and all those things were like trivial. It didn't apply to me. None of those things apply to me. To just be is the only way you can describe, best way to describe that.
Right. And it sounds like part of what you're talking about too is being part of everything. It sounds like you're also talking about interconnectedness, maybe
Mhm.
being part of something that's a bigger whole.
Yes,
Right.
yes,
So, for
definitely.
example, I know that I'm not a scientist, but experts tell us that the air that we breathe contains a certain number of particles that were breathed by early humans so
hmm
long ago, or that forest trees in a forest are interconnected with each other, interact with other species. So from
hmm
the way you're describing it seems to come through that there's this feeling of interconnection of some sort.
Oh yeah, definitely. When they say we're all connected, everything is connected. It's like with a circle, an infinite circle, where everything just, with some people, most people don't even know it. or aware that they connected, but we're all connected through the food we eat, the air we breathe, things we touch, just existing. That's just in the physical aspect of being connected, you know. And the spiritual aspect was like you're just part of one big body, you know, like you take a drop of water out the pond. Where you take a drop of water from the pond, it's still water. It still have the same properties. It's still there, you know.
Right. One part of
Yeah.
a greater whole.
Yes,
Right.
definitely.
Wow.
Definitely.
Something, a slightly different angle to what we're talking about now, and you may or may not have mentioned this in your summary of the NDE, but I believe you've written about this. You mentioned that your nephew said that he was somehow communicating with you while you were gone, when you had flatlined.
Mhm.
Can you talk to us a little bit about that? Were you aware? Were you conversing with him as he was conversing with you? Was it one-sided? How did that play out?
What's funny is that I don't remember talking to him, because some things I don't remember. But I remember that when my mom, she was rubbing on my arm, and my nephew had called, had called them, and he told them, I just saw Uncle Jay. He's in this dark place and everything, and he's saying, "What about my kids? What about my kids?" He don't want to leave. He said, "What about my kids?" And they was just listening, like, "What do you mean?" He said, "Stop rubbing on him. He don't like you rubbing on him." So they got really goosebumps and everything was tripping because my mom was actually rubbing on my arm, and he didn't know that. So apparently I told him that, and it's like I don't even remember it happening,
Yeah.
But the fact that he pointed out about my mom rubbing on his arm, that was something, it was something.
So that corroborates the rubbing of the arm, something that was really happening far away from where he was, and he had no way of knowing about that.
Yeah, and it's ironic because, like I said, he's my nephew, but he doesn't know as he was young. He didn't know like the relationship I had with my kids. And me, I'm always talking about my children, and I always said how much my kids mean to me. Anybody who knew me as I want to say as adult people I talk to, they know that how much I love my kids and that I didn't would never want to leave them. And I told them all when they were born, I said I would never leave you. Each one of them. I told them I would never leave you. So that emotion or that acknowledgement that I even brought up something about what about my kids also was like a hint that he knew something. He met me or something. And like I said, I don't remember some of those things, but the fact that he said that kind of corroborates the fact that he had contact with me in some way.
Right. Yes. And it
Yeah.
shows when you speak, just from what you've said thus far in our talk, it really shows that you are very, very much devoted to your family. That comes through very clearly. It shows in your face, in your voice when you describe it. So
No, no, no.
staying with your kids is of the utmost importance to
Hmm.
you. Right.
Yeah.
Wow. Amazing. So if we backtrack just a bit to sort of some of your values, some of your ideas, beliefs before the NDE had happened. If we can shift back to that period before the NDE, I guess it's fair to say that you were, as I mentioned before, a spiritual person in many ways, a spiritual seeker. You meditated. Was organized religion a part of your life or not?
It was, excuse me, it was a part of my life. My mom, very religious Baptist, and my not my grandmother, but my great grandmother, my mom's mom, she was religious. So my mom would she would try to get us to go to church all the time as kids, until we got to a certain age, and she just left it up to us, you know. But she always talked about God and Jesus, and to this day still does. And I kind of wanted to go another route, because Me and my buddies, yeah, we danced together. We were also friends and we talked about things. And one of the things we used to talk about, we was like, our moms and our parents go to church. They've been going to church our whole lives, praying to God and Jesus and all this time. It was like, well, why haven't our situations changed? If they pray so much, what's going on? Why haven't it changed? So it gave us like a catalyst to search and wonder why, how we can get these answers to something more, something spiritual. And when I was a teenager, I started one of the guys that I danced with. One of our performances, we had just finished performing at the Apollo Theater, the contest they had, and afterwards we were just talking, and we was like, "Man, thank you, Jesus, thank you, God," and everything. And he was like, "That's not right," and he was like, this, and that. You should find out. Jesus ain't his name. It's like, huh? It's like Jesus is English. We was like, man, we just thanking him. We glad we just were, you know. He said, you know, so he talked to us, you know, talked to us about it. We were just happy. We you know, blew it off to a little bit. So he invited us to the Bible class, but it's Knesset, it's a Hebrew Knesset in Chicago. So we went and we started finding out things and reading the Bible and everything. And some of the stuff was like really curious to us. We was like, okay, our parents go to church all the time, but we haven't, they don't talk about this part in the Bible. They don't talk about that in the Bible. Why is that? You know? And so the person was telling us this and we listened. So we like, but we want to know more. And one of the things they would tell us, they said, don't take our word for it. They said, we want you to study for yourself because in the book of Acts, it says, study to show thyself approved. You know, a workman need not be ashamed and, you know, finding the truth. So we did that. And we would study, and we wouldn't just study the Bible. We would study other things like books that were taken out of the Bible, you know, during the you know, the Roman Council of Nicene. We would study those books. We studied the Apocrypha, even look into things like the Quran or you know, um, history, world history. So we would study these things, and we just started realizing and started like, okay, there's something much more to our spirituality and to who we are. And so we would do that. And then when everything started happening, we started moving our own places. And I moved here, I kind of took a backseat a little bit to studying because now a lot of stuff with life, physical life is going on. So I kind of stopped looking into those things. But when it got too hard, sometime I started every now and then dabbling and then reading that book, Autobiography of Yogi. Then I started getting more into the spiritual aspect, less of the physical aspect of the Bible and books and stuff like that, but more into the spiritual aspect and was curious. So I I started doing that a lot. You know, I started talking about the importance of love because love is, I realized love is very important because even in my transition, I met love. I found out what love, who love is. You know, I found out that it was an entity, that it lived, that it was just as much an entity as what they call the Ruach, the Holy Spirit, just as much as entity as God, part of the Trinity. You know, it was just as much, and it exists everywhere at all times and in everyone. And most people don't grasp it. Most people don't hold on to it, you know, in their actions. So that's how I knew that love, that was energy, was love around my family, because I was familiar with it now. Because even though it was like no words and it wasn't the interaction that people would talk about today, when somebody asked me, says, so what did you hear something? Did somebody talk to you? Somebody talk to you? And I would like, what was said to me, I can say it can be communicated. It was only felt because I was part of everything. So it's almost like when you're part of everything, you're even part of love. So it's like it was just that communication to where it can't communicate it to you in physical words. And the best way I can tell you is to love, you know, and I can explain what some of the things is to love in the physical aspect, but the words and the way it was produced, you know, suggested to me, presented to me, and the way it presented itself to me, I can't put it in words.
When you say
So
that, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I've always was a spiritual person, but after the thing, I became even more alert and more spiritual.
Right. And do you think that the glow that you saw, you said when you woke up, you saw the glow around your family. Was that the glow of love? Was that a physical
Yes,
entity?
yes, it was part of love. It was, and like I said, it's everywhere, and I saw that glow, that love. It was part of love because I
Amazing.
said it is everywhere, so it was part of it.
Well, one of the many amazing realizations that you've come to, and that's actually what I'd like to start asking you about is
Yeah.
some of the realizations that you came to after the NDE. You know, I guess it's fair to say at this point that you've always been a spiritual seeker. You, during the NDE, had some of your questions answered or some of your ideas corroborated, but it sounds like you also developed some more questions at that time as a consequence of the NDE. But if we
Mhm.
look at some of the things that you took from it after the fact, upon reflection, you've already talked about a really, really important one about love. And I'd like to get you to tell us about a few others. What about the some of the abilities that you said that you developed after over time, presumably after coming back? You've talked and written about being able to feel emotions more easily, the emotions of others. You've also talked about, I believe you said when meditating, because you still meditate, when meditating that you can sometimes feel or see future events. Would you
Mhm.
care to talk about some of those things, the feeling other emotions, foreseeing events from the future?
Sure. When I first, when I one of the times when I regained consciousness when I was in the hospital, this was after I regained consciousness, but when I woke up, I would lie in the bed and I was just there. And then whenever they turned, it was around election time, and they were turning on the TV, and again, I'm a blank slate, no, no emotions or anything. They turned on the TV, and all of a sudden, I started seeing the things that was going on, and I got this urge, this feeling of sadness. It was very sad to where I got teary eyed, and it was very sad. It was like so much dissent, so much hate, spite, and I felt it, and I was sad, really sad. And then when I left the hospital, I came outside and I looked up, and it was like I had never seen anything, never seen those things before. Everything looked new. I had literally like a clean slate, like a baby. The buses that walked by, the automobiles, the clouds, the trees, everything was like my first time seeing them, and it was just, I want to say, a feeling of just of awe, you know. But then it's like it kind of started to, the feeling started to, I want to say, become more prevalent. Now I can start feeling a lot of anger, a lot of sadness, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to explain it at the time. I was just feeling it. I was just in a icky state, but I knew it was there. And when like somebody would tell me, you ask me like, "How you feeling?" They say, "I'm fine." Then I'd be like, "No, you're not. There's something bothering you. You just say like, I'm fine." I said, "Okay." But I know there's something bothering you. You don't have to tell me, but I know there's something bothering you. I can feel it, and it was like everything was heightened. Everything that was going on, it wasn't just feeling people around me. It was like I can feel it expanded, I want to say dang near universal, through this planet. A lot of sadness and angst. And I would spend a lot of days just in a low mood. My wife can contest to that. I would just do a lot of days in a low mood. And then I started to put two and two together because then I would perk up. Then I would be on about my life and my business. And then I would start feeling bad again. And I was like, why does it happen so many, different times? Feeling sad and bad again and stuff, like a few days. And then I start feeling good again. And, something bad happened in the world, some, like a train accident or something. And then it would happen. I just thought maybe that's just coincidence. But then it would happen often where I feel that way. It happened one time that it happened. I started to put two and two together where I was feeling that way. And then I got better. And then next thing you know, it was like a train derailment in Washington, I believe, or something like that, a train accident. And I was like, okay, maybe again, this is a maybe this is just a fluke or something. I'm like, okay, but that's bad that this happened. Another time happened again, started getting better later on that week. Then it was the shooting in Las Vegas. Then that thing happened. I said, okay, there's something to this. I don't understand it, but there's something to this because I don't know what would be the reason of me feeling this way if I don't know exactly what's going to happen. And how can I help people if it's happening? So I just kind of just let it just keep going. If something happened, cool. Something didn't, even great. But I just let it keep going on. So in my meditations and whatnot, I love my meditations. It gives you, when people ask me what it felt like to pass away and stuff like that, I always tell them that if you want to feel that way, the best way to even get remotely close to it is meditate. Because with meditation, you can literally just expand and go elsewhere to have anything to do with your body. You can
So
just
some
expand and
of,
go elsewhere.
I'm sorry, Leonard, just to clarify then, so some of the feelings that you experienced in the NDE, you can replicate or feel again. You can access those feelings through meditation.
Through meditation, you can. I mean, it's that serene, that calm, that just being, place. And I would meditate, like I said, day and night and still. And there were times where I started meditating like in my stepson's closet, because it's like quiet and dark. And I love it when it's that way and it's just me. So at times I would meditate and I would meditate really, I would just go into it to where sometimes when you meditate, you even forget that senses is working. Your breathing, your movement, you forget all about that and meditate. And then I would meditate and I was like, okay, didn't think of anything. Then I get that feeling. I say something's going to happen. Something's bad is going to happen that I can't explain it, but something's bad is going to happen. It's going to affect everybody. So what I did, I went to social media, Facebook, and I put it on my Facebook page. I said, something's going to happen. Something's coming real soon, and it's going to affect everyone. Can't say what it is, but it's going to affect everyone. Then the next day, that's when that George Floyd incident happened.
Oh,
And I
that was
was like,
huge.
wow. I said, wow. So I would, then other times where I would meditate, and I just meditate, and all of a sudden these numbers would come to me in these different places. And all of a sudden it was like, okay, this number, this day, pile up, pile up. So I wrote it down on my social media page because I just wanted to see where this was. And it was like the morning that I wrote it on my social media page. Later on that evening or the afternoon, all of a sudden our news comes on and it said that there was a pileup on the expressway.
Oh,
And I
that's
was
eerie.
like, very eerie. And then other stuff happened and whatnot. And I think one was something that was about a boat. And then I found out like over in Africa, it was a boat. It was a red boat where it had capsized in Africa. So that was in there too. So I was like, wow, okay, I got this. But this is beginning. I'm like, this is kind of a bit much. I don't know what to do with this. This is a lot. And then just when I said that, and then one day again, I got to meditating, a deep meditation. Then you know, with these visions. And I told my wife about it as soon as I had it. And I said, baby, I said, I just had these visions. I said, it was these soldiers. It was like they were going to war. I said, it was like green and red, like red band in their head. But it said, but it's like they were going to war against themselves, somewhat similar to themselves, but they were going to war. I said, I don't know what that means. I said, China, Russia. I said, because those are the only people I know that has red in their hat and stuff like that. I said, but they're going to war. And she said, I don't know. But then it was shortly after that, I think later on that year, that's when Ukraine and Russia went to war. And I got really kind of sad and scared at the same time. And I told the creator, I said, I don't know what good is this gift if I can't help people. I don't know why I see these things. I said it's a bit much because now I'm battling with my health physically at this time, trying to stay well. And now I get these visions that sometimes make me feel unwell when I have them and saddened. I was like, I don't think I'm ready for this. Please just take this away from me at this moment. I can't do this right now.
It must be
And
really
it's not,
draining when that occurs. It must be really tiring and draining.
it is. it is because it is because it comes with sadness, you know. It comes with angst. It comes with that. Sometimes I think sometimes it comes with the emotions of what some of the people who are experiencing it feels, you know. And it was just too much for me, so I just kind of it just stopped for a while, you know. And then when I started to feel a little better, I told him, I said, well, when you're ready, you can bring it back now. I think I can handle it. But I think the creator still knows what I can and cannot handle. So it like gives it to me in spurts, you know, because I still battle with my health sometimes. And a lot of people they don't know it, you know, because they say that, well, you look so good, you don't like you sick. I say that you don't so I don't supposed to have to show it. But it's
You've been
there.
through a lot. You're a trooper, but you've been through a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
really. Wow. Amazing though that and we wish you the best with your health, obviously. But it's an amazing ability that you seem to have developed, getting premonitions about some of the defining events that have really shaped our world in recent years, as you've described. Incredible. Wow.
yeah.
Um, a couple of other questions as we're sort of moving on towards the end of our time together. How do you respond to skeptics who say, near-death experience is the product of a dying brain, just a hallucination, just a dream? How did what you experienced differ from a dream?
You know, it's another question that I get, and I talked in the last few days with my best friend and my wife about it. I said sometimes I feel like because I've done a lot of podcasts, and I said sometimes I feel like I'm in a club where there's people who have NDEs and stuff like that. I said, but I don't want to be part of this club. I don't want to be part of a club of something that sometimes not everybody, sometimes some people would do something just so they can get a story or just so they can have something to share to be part of something. And I said, I'm not saying that these people didn't experience these things. I said, but I don't want to be part of something where it becomes like a fad. Um, I said, what I experienced was real. I said, I knew I existed and I knew I wasn't here in this body. I knew I wasn't at one point in time on this planet. It was real. I said, because it was so ironic that when I woke up, I felt like this was the dream. I felt like I was where I was forever. I felt like because I was so familiar with it, it's like I had already, I'm from that. This is the real life. This is the real life where I was. But when I came back, it's okay, like now this is the dream. It felt fake. You know, it just felt like, you know, I'm like, I want to go back to sleep.
We
And
we
then
hear. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I would say that then there's the thing of, some people say, well, yeah, you didn't die. You were still hooked up to the breathing machine and stuff like that. And I'm like, I said, clinically deceased is when your heart stops beating. I said, my heart had stopped beating, and I have the doctors to verify that. I've even had when I went back for a checkup, one of the surgeons, the doctors who was there, I had to go a checkup with him. He was like, this may sound funny. He said, I hope you take it offensive. He said, but can I take a picture with you? He said, I told my wife and everybody about this situation. Can I just take a picture with you? He said, of course. So I took a picture with him. And my cardiologist, every time I get my appointment with him, he said, I tell my colleagues about your story all the time. He said, my friend, you were dead. He said, you were not here. You were dead. He said, you came back. He said, I tell my colleagues about you all the time. He said, you're a
Incredible.
miracle.
And
And
you've kindly shared some of that documentation with me, and I'll be putting that in the show notes.
yeah, it was social media. Even social media was, everybody was passing the, rest in peace. And my cousin put the social media thing up saying that, yes, want to let everyone know, family, friends, that yes, Jay died last night. He was my brother and everything. And other people saying RIPs. My daughter responded on there, and then my job, Coca-Cola, they even sent the letter to my family, which I have, which I forwarded to you.
Yes,
You
indeed.
know, it's eerie. It says,
It
on
must
the
be
behalf of
strange. It must be
it's
strange
very
for you to look
strange.
back and see
Yeah, every time you
documents about
see
your
it.
death.
Yeah, it's like we were notified about the death of your loved one, Leonard Martin. We want to give our condolences. And it's like, wow, this actually happened,
Yeah.
you know? So when someone had the skeptics, it was like, okay, yeah, we hear these stories all the time. I'm like, okay, well, I said I got my letter from the a company that's a Fortune 500 company, valid, just saying that they got the letter from doctors, the notice from doctors that it happened. I got RIP from people that saying it happened, saying, yeah, I have the doctors who was there say it happened, and the entire Ohio Health Network. I said, I'm like, what more do you want?
The
But at the
proof is
same
there.
time, I'm not here for to tell you guys stories or something just to make you happy. I'm here to share something with you to let you know that you are more than your body. You
That's
are more than
something.
your,
I'm
yeah.
sorry, Leonard. Maybe that's what I'd like you to broach if you don't mind. It sounds like you're moving in that direction. What are your feelings about death and the afterlife at this point, and the difference between mind and body, the dichotomy between the two, and uh, and what are some final thoughts that you have for us? But I don't want to put words in your
Sure.
mouth. I'll let you explain
Oh,
all
it's
that,
okay.
please.
Sure. Well, doctors and sometimes some scientists, a lot of them, science speak on a, theory and things, and some doctors, etc., some people. But with death, I found out through this that you never die. This body is just something that your spirit is driving for the most part to experience things on this world and to strengthen that spirit of who you are, with knowledge and etc. And when your family or someone leaves here, their body may have returned back to the earth, I said, but their spirit still exists. Where it goes, I can't say how far they went or where they are, but you never really die. And I think found that most people are afraid of death because they don't know what to expect. They expect something scary, either something that's a picture that's been painted of a hell, like a fire, or heaven where there's a trees and things like that and everything. So some people are afraid of what they don't know when they hear of death. And I think part of that is attachment. A lot of people don't want to leave what they have, knowing that when you make that transition, you are leaving all these physical things that mean so much to you to be. You can't take them with you because you are, I want to say, I'm not saying intangible, but you are not matter. Who you are is more than this body. So everything that's with this body is associated with this earth, and everything is physical. So when your true part leaves this body, only things that's associated with the spirit and everything is what will matter. So people don't want to leave these things. It's the attachment. They don't want to leave it, and it scares them. And that's where that fear of death comes from. If you got detached from everything, not to say you love anybody any less, you still love them because that's going everywhere, you know, but not be afraid to be detached or lose something or whatnot. When you get to that point to where it doesn't matter if it's gone or not, that transition comes a bit easier, it becomes a bit easier, especially to know that you're not gone and you're not really losing that family member that you love. You're not.
Those are
So,
wise words and reassuring words.
yeah, and consciousness. Yeah, sometimes consciousness, I don't believe is associated with the brain. I believe it's associated with something beyond the brain because I knew I existed. The doctors already told you that, told everybody that, you know, the heart was beating, no oxygen going anywhere in my body. My brain wasn't getting the oxygen, So it's like, so consciousness is beyond the brain. I believe it's your subconscious may have something to do with the brain.
We've
you
heard,
know,
I'm sure you've heard, as I have, that the line of thought that consciousness, as you're saying, is actually located outside the brain. The brain is actually the receiver that brings it in,
yeah,
but consciousness cannot be reduced to the brain. The brain is just the receiver. If the brain dies, the consciousness is still there.
it's still there. And I was witness of it. And I just say these things and just share these stories with people. And it's not a bragging, definitely not a bragging, because at first I didn't want to write the book because the humility was with me. I was like, I didn't want to make it seem like I'm bragging. And everybody was like, no, you're not bragging. You're not bragging at all. You're inspiring so many people. in this matter. They said, write it. And my post-stroke neurologist, when I went to her, it was like after I got to the hospital, I took her a copy of my book. She said, I'm surprised you was able to write a book, with everything that happened to your brain. And then she pulled up the screen. She said, you had a stroke here, 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 here. Flip the screen and just point them all the places. She said, you had 26 strokes. I was surprised you was able to do that.
You're a survivor. It's amazing that you've come through the ordeal that you experienced
I'm
not
grateful.
only in the NDE but before the NDE. So many health issues, and you're with us in one piece, really articulate and spreading an amazing message.
Yeah, it's a lot. Some of my nephew and some people would say that you came out almost like unscathed. No, I wouldn't come out unscathed. I have traumatic brain injury now, and because of the strokes with different parts of my body, a lot of them was in my cerebellum, and I have vertigo all the time. Some days are worse than others. No medicine can fix it because this brain thing is damaged. It damaged the signal between my vestibular system and my eyes to where sometimes I can't like move my eyes fast or my head's like my eyes are moved, but my take a while for it to catch up. And then, that is dizzy. I'm dizzy a lot all the time. And like I said, they can't do anything about it. Sometimes shaking my head. I have neurological, uh, some nerve issues that have nerve damage. Um, my left side from my knee down, I can't move it, at least because of the strokes and everything. So I can't move my toes or anything. Um, and when I get sick often, you know, and because we don't know what parts of the brain that those damage was in, they can't pinpoint why, I would get sick. So I just live with it and I just try to cope with it the best way I can and stay optimistic.
Good.
And I don't stop. I don't want to stop, and I started that sanctuary because it was one of the first things that I was sure about when I regained consciousness. Build a place where people can come and learn to meditate or just come and be blessed and find out how to get there on their time. It was hard to do it because afterwards I lost my home because I was disabled, so I lost my home. I lost my job after nearly 20 years. Some things I couldn't do anymore. I had to completely start over. And because of that, I didn't have capital, finance, credit, and stuff like that. So I couldn't build my location yet. I'm going to build it. I am. I'm still optimistic. I'm going to build it, and it's for people, and I'm going to build it someday.
The word that comes through when we hear your story and everything that you've experienced is determination, perseverance.
Yes,
I don't have any doubt that you're going to accomplish your goals. You've
indeed. Thank you.
been through,
Thank you so much. Thank you.
well, it's true, you've been through an incredible ordeal, not only during the NDE, as I said, but beforehand too. You've come through it with scars, emotional and physical, but it's amazing that you're contributing to our world, to society, to the world around you, to making the world a better place, more than a lot of people who haven't had the obstacles that you have had. It's incredible the amount that you're contributing and the sanctuary that you've created. Sounds well, it's you doing your part to try and help people make the world a better place through your
All praises.
insights and your experience.
All praises to our creator. All praises to our creator. I want to add this one note real fast. The girlfriend that I dated in 2015, she was there at the hospital every day when it happened. We had just started dating. And when it happened, she had just came in from work. My son called her and said, Dad died. So she raced right back up to the hospital. And what's so ironic was that I was a level right underneath where she usually works at. And she was there every day by my bedside. And one day I saw her by my bedside. She was holding my hand and I couldn't talk with the trach and everything. And I looked at her and like I said, I was clear in a divine place. So everything was divine. There was no, what they say, ulterior motives or anything and none of that stuff. So everything's fine. I looked up at her, looked down, and my eyes got teary. And I looked back up at her and I moved my mouth and I asked her to marry me. She said yes, of course, and I still get teary eyed. She's my wife to this day.
Amazing. She was devoted. You're lucky to have her. She's lucky to have you. You're lucky to have each other.
Death to you part, and we didn't even get to that point yet. It's like you don't even know me yet. It was death to us part. You were still here.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's amazing to finish up with a great love story. Happy for the both of you. That's wonderful.
Thank you.
Leonard, just as we're finishing up, any final thoughts that you'd like to share?
Just real quick. Um, Whatever you are going through, people are going through in this world, may be hard, sad, difficult to experience and see, but these things will make you stronger. They will make your spirit stronger to handle everything to come your way the next moment. And something will always present itself because we live in a world where people are always being challenged, either by others or things with the nature of our planet. You're going to always be challenged, but the experiences that you experience, whatever it may be, it's like a strengthening tool for you, a strengthening tool. And once you learn from it, continue to live, learn to love, not admire, not desire, not fulfill some attachment thing because you just want somebody to be with. Learn to love others, but learn to love yourself first. And you will soon see that it's all beautiful. It's all beautiful. And meditate. Learn to meditate. It's hard at first. I know how it is. It can be hard at first, but you must learn to meditate so you can become familiar with you, familiar with the you that's part of everything. And that part has no sadness, no sorrow, no anger, no happiness, none of the things that's associated with some of the sometimes hurtful things of this body for being here. When you meditate and you get there, you're gonna love it. I'm telling you, you're gonna love it. It's beautiful. Try
Sage,
it.
sage words, wise words to finish up with, and reassuring words that we can all learn from someone who knows what he's talking about.
We're grateful,
Thanks,
brother.
Leonard. Thank you,
Grateful, friend.
Leonard. Thank you. Leonard, you've been really generous with your time. Your story is remarkable. It's inspiring. It's compelling. Can teach us lots of lessons about love, about perseverance, about the afterlife. Thanks very much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me. I am so grateful for you. I am really grateful.
Pleasure's ours. Remember that Leonard's book is called The Second Time Around, a memoir about a life, a death, and a second chance. He's the owner of Deleth Aromatherapy and Meditation Sanctuary. Everything we've talked about will be in the show notes very soon. Be able to find his information there. Leonard, once again, thanks very much for being on Spirit today, and it's a real pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you again. Take care, everybody.
Take care. What an experience Leonard had, and what great insights he has given us to ponder and act upon. The documents that Leonard kindly furnished us with when everyone thought he was gone, which happily he's not, can be found in the show notes if you're watching us. You can also go directly to the On Spirit Today Facebook and Instagram pages to see the documents and a picture. Join us for the next episode of On Spirit Today for another interview with another amazing guest.